past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
I did that. Okay. Still can't hear.
Okay. There we go. All right. So let's try this again from the top. Greetings. They are arresting students that are here legally and threatening deportation. First Amendment be damned. They are deporting immigrants that are here legally, accusing them of being gang members and sending them to prisons in El Salvador without due process. 14th Amendment be damned. Dr. Rasha Alaway, a professor at Brown University's medical school who was sent back to Lebanon last week despite having a valid visa, allegedly told customs agents that she had attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, according to the Department of Homeland Security. So when they came for them, you sat silent. When they came for you, there was no one left to defend you. Will they come for you? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is Trump keeping his promise to deconstruct the administrative state? And is it just Trump? My guest is an American political activist and author. He is a co-founder and current chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, which leads the Uhuru movement. He is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. As always, Brother Chairman, welcome back.
Dr. Wilmer, I really appreciate being with you. Thank you so much for having me.
First and foremost, let me start with how are you after all the trials and tribulations, literally and figuratively? You look great. How you doing?
I'm quite well. Thank you so much, my good doctor.
So with that, there are a number of people that I could have called to have this conversation with, but I think you have such a unique perspective that my producer and I wanted to hear from you. Your thoughts on my open. Is Trump keeping his promise to deconstruct the administrative state, and is it just Trump?
Well, first of all, I think that Trump is keeping his promise to deconstruct what he has characterized as the administrative state. However, what they are talking about, as you know, the Trump administration, particularly Steve Bannon, they introduced this discussion recently about the deep state. Mm-hmm. What we are saying is the state is the state. You can characterize it as deep, shallow, administrative, or what have you. But the state is that organization of coercion that includes things like the prison system and the military and the CIA and FBI as police departments. That's like the hard state. And then people talk about soft state entities, such as you might characterize as USAID, all of these other entities. But Trump is not destroying the state. I think when we recognize that the elections in this country are simply nonviolent contests between different contending sectors of the colonial ruling class for control of the state, so that it can meet their own economic and political interests, then we know that with the election of Trump in 2016, the election did not result in Trump having control of the state. In fact, the state turned against Trump. Trump was trying to do various kinds of things at that time. FBI came at him, CIA came at him, all kinds of forces like that came at him and limited what it was that he could do. Even people who came into his administration, even people who, like his campaign chair, was arrested, and some of these people were imprisoned and threatened with imprisonment, etc. So Trump did not succeed in capturing control of the state his first time out. People talk about deep state, but when you talk about the state, you're talking about the state. And there's contention between sectors of the ruling class for control of that state. And usually it has been more or less nonviolent, which makes it unnecessary in the United States, as we've seen in certain other places, or it has made it unnecessary for contending sectors of the ruling class who want to carry out their own economic interests to get their warlords and fight over it, etc. That hasn't been necessary to put them in the streets. Although we've seen it come close to that with Trump administration, and maybe even closer now than ever. We saw January 6th. All of this by Trump, again, was a failure to capture control of the state through the electoral process the first time out. Second time out, he succeeded in capturing control of the administration. He's cleaning house. And it's a whole new ball game that we're looking at. And so, I mean, that has occurred. And I think it's really important for us to understand. It's hard for people to understand it who themselves have a politic that rely on either the Democrats or the Republicans to be in control. The fact is that the state is the control of the ruling class that may call itself at some juncture Democrat or Republican, as you've seen, especially since the advent of John Trump. What used to be characterized left in the electoral political arena is no longer left. Trump looked in 2016 like the peace candidate, while you saw the Democratic Party that has always pretended to be for peace sounded like the war party. The Democrats, who are supposed to be the working class party, now clearly represents one of the most extensive component of the oligarchy, and the Republican Party now appears to, if you look at the demographics, represent the workers, white workers, of course, in this country, and increasingly not just white workers. Mm-hmm. So it's really transformed the kind of situation that we're looking at. And I think the immigration question is representative also of this contest between sectors of the ruling class and the and the crisis, the critical character of the colonial apparatus itself, the colonial state itself.
I said in my open, I asked the question, is Trump deconstructing the administrative state? And then I asked, is it just Trump? And to your point, the state is the state. What I meant by that is, yes, right now, we are focused, if not distracted, by all the antics by Donald Trump and his minions. But the Uhuru movement was persecuted not by Donald Trump, but by Joe Biden.
That's true. But even then, even while we were being tried, and we understood that we were looking at a real contest between sectors of the ruling class itself. Obviously, we didn't do what they said we did. I mean, we didn't do it. And even as recently as March 29th, the New York Times ran a serious article talking about how the U.S. government was involved in trying to overthrow, to attacking Russia through Ukraine. So, I mean, it's clear we didn't do what they said we did. But law has never been a factor that's determined how things went, except it gave cover for the political actions that any of the ruling class forces wanted to do, who needed the pretense, who needed a democratic, quote unquote, cover for what it was they were carrying out. So what we've seen is, when I talk about what Trump has done in terms of administrative state in this instance, I'm talking about what he's done to the state that was controlled primarily by the Democratic Party, or that sector of the ruling class. But we remember it was the Democratic Party that started this cry about the Russians were responsible for the election outcome. It was the Democratic Party that used the state to come at Trump. In many ways, creating the political atmosphere and context for the response that we see happening with Trump. We see two different sectors of the rulers in this country who were fighting for control of the state, who have particularly significantly different agendas in terms of how to forward the interests of capitalism, of the colonial empire at this particular time. And Trump, neo-colonialism, that is to say, white power in blackface, white power in brownface, etc., represents a victory of liberalism. It's the liberals who would promote putting a black person in charge of the army to go and help kill people in Ukraine or Palestine, etc. That's liberalism. It's the liberals who would put an Obama in charge of carrying out the attacks on Africa and black people in this country, and etc. That's the liberalism. The so-called right wing are those are ones who say, pull out the guns. We don't want it. We shut it down. And the liberals don't not do this because they love us. They do that because there's a presumption that if they attack us this way, it's going to result in serious struggles and fightbacks, etc. And they think that they can stabilize the situation, keep the situation stable by creating these pressure relief valves, with offering some welfare over here, some picture, some symbol of freedom for black people over here, where the so-called conservatives and reactionaries, they say, forget that, crush it all. This is the kind of contest that we're looking at. And the thing is that I think we have to move beyond this, because Trump is moving in a certain way. Now, we can look at Obama, for example, one of the issues that we're talking about now, immigration. Obama was responsible for kicking out more people in this country than anybody up to that time. Biden, somebody who competed with Obama in terms of the numbers of immigrants kicked out. I forgot how many hundreds of thousands Biden had kicked out in 2020, in the year of 2024. So we're looking at this stuff that's being happening by two sectors of the ruling class, both fighting more or less for the same thing, except that one group has political economic interests that takes them and that create different policies than the others.
Two elements of the ruling class that takes me to the adage, when the elephants fight, the grass suffers.
Yes.
So what then? Could people ask me this all the time? So what then are we to do, as we are sitting here watching the elephants fight? and the grass is suffering. For example, what the stock market lost $5 trillion in value yesterday, which makes one wonder how artificially inflated was that in the first place. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it breaks my heart that the stock market went down, and I think, I don't think this is something that working people should be that concerned about. Certainly, I don't think most Africans are concerned about that. And yes, there's at least in the short term and perhaps long term crisis that's reflected economically by things like the stock market. But I think what it is that we have to do is recognize that there is a crisis here in this social system. And the crisis is reflected even by the emergence of Donald Trump. Before that, the crisis was reflected in the selection of Barack Hussein Obama. When the ruling class can't rule in the same old way, that's why an Obama was necessary. Couldn't do it in the same old way. That's why Trump is necessary. Couldn't do it in the same old way. And so they're flipping the script and trying all kinds of things that gives it a sense of being erratic. And it is erratic because they don't control things as much as they would like us to think they control. If they control things, they wouldn't have battleships in the Mediterranean trying to control something like 3 million people on a tiny space like Palestine. It wouldn't be necessary for them to use armored vehicles and military forces to attack the Uhuru movement in one of the most oppressed sectors of St. Louis, Missouri. That's not a force that's in control. That's inability to control things as they used to be able to control it. So our responsibility is to recognize that the whole system is experiencing different kinds of fissures. There's splits happening. There's splits within the ruling class. Internationally, splits in the ruling class that's going on. And we can see this contest happening between different sectors of the international ruling class. Even the group that initially, and that has had up to now, a united kind of control of the world economy, of the basic politics of the world that's been characterized as the Atlanticist bloc. Trump busted up the Atlanticist bloc that came into existence after the Second World War, that created NATO, that created the United Nations, that created the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and most of the trade agreements and things like that. Trump busted it up. And as a consequence of that, he created a tremendous amount of uncertainty among that sector of the rulers of the world. And people are contending with that. Trump with his tariffs and things like that, initiating trade wars and stuff that's going to impact the economy in a certain way. I'm not crying about an impact of the economy. I'm saying that what we have to do is recognize that their crisis is their crisis and that we should not hitch our wagon to either one of them, but chart our own course and begin to create our own process for collecting and connecting our people, not just in this country, but globally. We are part of a global struggle. You said something about that in your opening about how we are part of a whole world community. And I think that the work that we are doing here in the United States, and specifically, but also throughout the world, is one of the problems. They attacked us because we haven't relied on them. We've been constructing our own. We got something like 50 some odd economic institutions of our own. We've used the electoral process ourselves to put the Black Revolution into the electoral process so that masses of people have access to different ideas that we've been pushed out of. They assassinated us out of the electoral process and put these other forces, so-called good trouble, in place to pacify people. And what it did, of course, was it made Black people cynics about the entire electoral process because it didn't represent us. Didn't represent what Malcolm was talking about before they killed him. Didn't represent what the Black Panther Party was talking about before they killed him. Didn't before they made this war against them. Didn't welcome into what Martin Luther King was talking about before they killed him. It represented the sector of the ruling class that was consolidated in the Democratic Party. And it didn't take that long for Black people who died in this country, who were the most fierce fighters for democratic rights in the electoral process. It didn't take that long after that to realize that we're not getting anything from the Democratic Party. And so I'm saying now we're using that electoral process, and we're taking Malcolm's into the electoral process, and we're taking King into the electoral process. We're taking the Panthers and Jomo into the electoral process, and then using it as a means to which we organize our people around in our own interests and on our own course, and win whomever else out there in the world can be won to unity with this, because it is the world community that we're talking about. And also, you know, we're doing work in Africa, we're doing work and throughout Europe, pulling particularly, specifically the African revolution into a single voice and on a single trajectory, a common trajectory. This is world shattering. This is the kind of this is the basis for them attacking Garvey, talking about immigration. What they do when Garvey began to build these economic entities for Black people around the world, they used the process of immigration to kick him out of the country. So this has been a common, you know, kind of thing. And the big problem that the United States has is that it's a part of a colonial mode of production. It's center of a colonial mode of production. It's center of a reality that the entire economy rests upon the stolen labor value land of colonized people. And our presence is an indictment of the system itself. So you're talking about who can't come into the country. You talk about if Mexicans and people south of the border come into the country, they've characterized that as the reconquista, the reconquest of their own territory. Every Mexican, everyone who comes across that artificial border that the United States and white people created represents a threat to the security of this country, because there is a means by which they are reconquering their own land, their own resources. And Africans who were kidnapped and brought here, we, along with the Mexicans and other peoples like that, represent that sector of the population that is very dynamic and very critical to the continuing efficacy of the colonial mode of production, the settler colonialism that is the United States. It's a very, very serious and tricky kind of situation that they're trying to control, and they can't control it.
You know, you mentioned just a little earlier, and Mel W., thank you so much for that super sticker. Greatly, greatly appreciate the support. You mentioned Palestine.
Yes.
And I was just talking to my students today about having to understand the difference in the difference in strategy between the oppressor and the oppressed. And I was making the point that the fact that the Israeli so-called defense forces have been bogged down in Gaza for as long as they have been is clear evidence that Israel is losing the fight. The fact that in the United States, they have to create this whole mythology about anti-Semitism, and they're taking money from Columbia University and they're taking money from Harvard University because they claim that those institutions aren't defending anti-Semitism, tells me it's very clear they're losing the argument. And so your thoughts on and looking at Yemen and Ansar Allah, one of the poorest countries in the world, is controlling the maritime transit in the Red Sea. We have the Eisenhower battle group. We've got the Gerald Ford battle group. All of this firepower, and some folks with some sandals and some missiles are kicking your natural bone behind.
Yes.
Chairman, your thoughts?
I just think that's so important. I'm reminded by a slogan by Hugh P. Newton that the will of the people is greater than the man's technology. And also, you know, a point that I've tried to make over and over again for years now. If you go back and view the presentation that I made at Oxford in 2019, in the debate about greater unity and union within Africa itself. I opened it up. A part of my presentation talked about the attack that this country was making on Yemen. This was before Trump. This was before the Palestinian October 7th, with how the Palestinian issue has busted open now. The United States arming Saudi Arabia, given strategic direction to this war of killing people in Yemen and so-called Houthis at that time. Just grotesque murder. And the fact is that they can't contain this thing because they have built a system on a fault line of colonialism. And what that means is that every time that is to say, the colonial subjects, those of us who are oppressed by this system that rest upon a foundation of our oppression, every time we move, you see the whole system goes into paroxysm, and that's what we're looking at now. Except now, it's existential. It's an extraordinary moment in history where I don't think they'll ever be able to recover from this. And when you talk about the rights of this thing that we've also said all along, talk about what's happening at the universities and even what's happening to white students who out there protesting, etc., is that the rights of everybody. This is what we said during our trial, that these rights, these so-called rights that came with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they were not for us. We were enslaved at that time. They couldn't have been for us. And so what we have is the settler colony, the settler colonized, they took this land from the indigenous people. They killed them. They put them in concentration camps where they still are, that they call Indian reservations. They put us in concentration camps. They call housing projects. They call them ghettos, and they call them prisons right now, where we are still suffering under these kinds of situations. And so what you got is they did this in the name of fighting for freedom, and they did find freedom. They found freedom from the tyranny of European feudalism. They found freedom from that, but they found the freedom to do what? To oppress. The freedom to oppress the indigenous people, the freedom to oppress African people, put us in slavery, etc. That's what their freedom rests on, and that's what we were trying to tell them all along. That you're not doing me a favor when you come and stand up and around the questions of this attack that's being made on me because I'm protesting what's happening to African people, what's happening to other peoples around the world. You're not helping me. You're helping yourself, because I never had free speech. It's never been there for Black people. Now, we've been the hardest fighters for free speech and democratic rights in anybody in this country. So it was yours. And so what they do is they attack you through me. They come and get your rights through me. And this thing that the people are trembling about, fascism is coming, fascism is coming. You're talking about an introduction into the settler or the colonial society of some of the kinds of impositions, some of the kind of attacks that's being made normally with colonized people. This is normal. Fascism is an abnormality. It is something that happens during crisis. But colonialism works all the time against Africans, against the people who they got in cages. Nobody talk about fascism being here because they got Mexicans, children in cages at the southern border, or because how they murdered George Floyd and how they killed Black people on the regular. They're not saying fascism. It's just when it talks about the potential of it being something that can also bring possible aggression against white people, then the fascism question happens. And what that means is they want me to drop the struggle that I'm making against colonialism and to concentrate on fighting against fascism, which is more important to them than it is to me. And that we still leave colonialism in place because it's a form of the state. But that's another fascism is. That's the kind of thing we're looking at. We have to go deeper. I'm tired of going over and over again every time some particular politician gets to power. How many times have we done this? How many times we went through everything from Reconstruction? We went through what has been characterized segregation, desegregation, integration. None of that changed the reality that Black people live under colonial domination. We still have seen that our freedom, our liberties have been taken away from us. And so it's just who's at the head of the thing today. And that's what they even were able to do that with an Obama. You know, that Obama is supposed to be representing freedom, and he just represented white power in a Black face.
which I call that minstrel politics and minstrel diplomacy.
Yeah.
And I used that to refer to the manner in which the United States went and found Kenya to back the play on the attack of Haiti.
Yes.
William Ruto to back the play on Haiti. You mentioned fascism and all of these atrocities that have been inflicted on both the indigenous inhabitants of the continent, as well as those that were enslaved here. And that made me think about something that I've been saying for the last few days. When you look at all these town hall meetings that are taking place in a lot of red states, and all these people are very angry and they're screaming at their elected representatives. And these are MAGA people. These are Republicans that voted for Donald Trump, and they're saying, I didn't vote for this.
Yes.
I didn't vote for this.
Yes.
What they're really saying is, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to do this to me. My wife was not supposed to lose her job.
Right on.
The health clinic that I've been driving to, that's 20 minutes away, that you're now closing, and now I have to drive 90 minutes to get my Ozempic or whatever the heck it is you need. You weren't supposed to do that to me.
Right.
I'm white.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
That's what these people are screaming about.
But the thing that's really interesting is that this crisis has been something that's trying to expose itself for a while now. If you remember, in 2016 in particular, there was a real wild year electorally. They had something like 16 different Republicans contending for the nomination. I think 2016, which means, from our perspective, that's a symptom of the split that exists in the ruling class, because they had all these different people who would represent their interests trying to capture.
Jeb Bush was running. Mitt Romney was running.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was running. And it was the old guard.
Yes.
Versus Donald Trump.
Yeah. And then you look at what happened in that election, because the people were tired. The people in this country, white people too, tired of the status quo. And the so-called Democratic Party and the white left were incapable of speaking to white people. They won't speak to white people. They've been in their times in my community and the Mexican community trying to direct us. That's another form of colonialism. So what we say is that the white people want to change. So you see, the white people, what were the most exciting contenders for both the Democratic and Republican Party in that year? Who were the most exciting? Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. They broke out of that whole thing, and then of course the Democratic Party crushed Sanders, etc. And so everybody wanted something different, but their worldview would limited them to an expectation that they could get it from one of these parties or the other, and that was not the solution. And so what we're saying is, look, we have white people who worked under our leadership for reparations, opposition to genocide against, in 130 cities in this country. We want to talk to those white people. People are upset to me because I spoke to somebody who, Tucker Carlson, who they said, this guy's a right winger. Why are you talking to Tucker? I said, because I want to talk to white people. Because the white left do not talk to white people. If I can talk to them, I can show them that their interests are not there. It's over here. Here's where the interest, not on some left-wing stuff, but there is interest in deconstructing the whole colonial thing that's responsible for all of us being oppressed. That's what has to happen. But they would lock us, and virtually everything that you see now opposing Trump is an apology for the Democratic Party. And by which I mean so-called left-wingers, so-called black nationalists, etc. They don't offer an alternative to the system. So if you're not offering an alternative to the system, what you're doing is promoting the Democratic Party, whether you say Democratic Party or not. So we say that there is an alternative, and we are it. And I'm saying also that the people that have to have to define themselves as the alternative, because that's one of the traps that people feel themselves locked into. They don't see an alternative to what it is that they are experiencing now. The ruling class media will lock out any choice, any voice. That's why it's so important to have this discussion, how you open up these doors so people can have discussions as well. Because the ruling class media, by the way, showed itself to be absolutely unrepresentative in terms of people, because all the media, all the ruling class media came out for Kamala Harris. Everybody from the Wall Street Journal all the way down, and they couldn't pull it off. The black middle class, petty bourgeoisie, they all came out for Kamala Harris herself, then Barack Hussein Obama, then all the black politicians. They couldn't win African people to support the murderous Kamala Harris regime that was killing Palestinians every day, and then response to the condition of they couldn't pull it off. And so what we have to say is that we are the solution. We cannot rely on them. We have to say that we are the solution ourselves. That's our position, our objective. I'm planning to govern. I want to be clear. I'm planning to govern. I'm not just a protester. Protesting is wonderful, but it's like being on a treadmill. And you can run. You can get sweaty as hell. You can get muscle cramps and everything, and a sense of being
go nowhere.
But you're not going anywhere. So the objective is what to what end? What to what end? If it's not about power, what the hell is it about? This is what we have to ask ourselves, and this is what we're fighting for. Yeah.
You know, that just a quick aside, that I was listening to an interview with Magic Johnson. They were talking about the guy they call Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And Ant-Man was saying that the old heads, you know, they couldn't play today and all this kind of stuff. And Magic looked, he says, you know, young man, come talk to me when you won something. Because he said, young man,
yeah,
I got 5.
Yeah.
Come talk to me when you, he said, because that's what this is about.
Yes,
he
indeed.
said, it's not about athleticism. It's about winning. So come talk to me when you've won something.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bernie, and we saw Bernie in 2016, and we saw what they did to him.
Yes.
We saw Bernie in 2020, and we saw what they did to him.
Yes.
And I will also say what he allowed to be done to him. And now you've got Bernie out there again. Now AOC standing next to him, but you've got Bernie out there again, who, by the way, has a very good idea about removing the Social Security ceiling and all of that.
Yeah.
But my point is, he's the sheepdog for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Because the same thing that happened to him in 2016, and the same thing, he's out there once again by himself. The party is not embracing Bernie and his rhetoric. That to me speaks volumes.
And he accepted the role, and he continued to, accept the role. And AOC similarly, they accept that role. And they don't see an alternative to the existing system. Sanders calls himself a socialist, etc., and so does AOC. And we call Sanders a Walmart socialist because he talks about $15 an hour over a number of years. Hell, Walmart does that already. That's not the statement of socialism. Socialism conceptually represents a mode of production that cannot coexist in the same space of capitalism, which is exploitative up and down the line. That's why we have to go beyond. Even, I'm not saying that we don't have tactics and strategy. People used to challenge the Black Power movement because the Black Power movement rejected philosophical nonviolence. To say we reject philosophical nonviolence is not to say that we adopted pacifism or what Malcolm X characterized, as masochism. It's not the same thing. It means that as a matter of philosophy, we don't say that we are nonviolent regardless of what you do or how things are going. It means that you don't say I'm going to be violent in the middle of a demonstration. I'm surrounded by the cops and the army, etc. I'm just going to carry out some kind of reckless violence or something to that effect. So the thing is that we're not saying that we cannot fight for reform. We can fight for reform. But the reform has to be something that takes us to another end beyond what it is that we are now. It has to be something that functions as a part of the process to deconstruct this colonial relationship, this colonial domination that's been imposed on us at gunpoint and that's maintained at gunpoint, because people will talk about a George Floyd and the other kinds of atrocities being committed against Africans and other people, outstanding atrocities. These are atrocities for various reasons the ruling class media was not able to ignore. But the fact is, that's the way life is for us. We live with this every day. There are people, the same kind of violence happened to George Floyd, it happened in another sector of the community on the same. They just didn't know it was happening over there. But when the media, that's one of the reasons the media participates in self-censorship. They don't want us to know what's happening, what we are doing ourselves. They don't want us to understand our own competence, as a people. That's why we have to have our own media capacity. That's why I'm glad to be here. That's why we have a Burning Spear newspaper. That's why we've invested in creating radio stations, et cetera, that can tell our story. And that's what we have to do. We have to train people in our own communities. We have to train them how to tell the story, how to communicate with our own folk, because the ruling class is not going to do it for us.
You mentioned Barack Obama. You mentioned Kamala Harris, who by the way was trying to sell us genocide.
Yes. And
folks, couldn't understand when I would say, well, genocide is a red line for me.
Yeah.
You back that, I can't back you.
Yeah.
But that takes me to the question of you mentioned the black bourgeoisie. So where is black leadership today? We watched Cory Booker on Tuesday, his 25-hour speech on the floor of the Congress. Congratulations, Senator. Thank you. You broke Strom Thurmond's 24-hour record. But to me, what he clearly highlighted was how vacuous the Democrats really are. Why was it April 1st when the election took place November 5th? What has taken so long for somebody to stand up somewhere and say something? And the other thing is, he talked about at the end, this is a moral crisis. The country is in a moral crisis. But he didn't say a damn thing about genocide.
Yeah.
He didn't say nothing in that whole 25 hours. The United States cannot continue to support genocide.
Yeah.
So thank you, Senator. But what did you do? You talked for 25 hours.
Yeah, you can't get away with that stuff with me anymore. Don't tell me about moral genocide. A country that doesn't even have the capacity to stand up and say we're going to give reparations to African people from whom we've stolen everything, who we brutalize on a daily basis, who we murder without any thought. The cops murder us. How the largest prison population in the world occupied mostly by Africans and people who they like to refer to as third world, but other colonized people. 2/3 of the prison population, and suddenly you're going to find some moral deficit in this country? No. You can't do that. And I don't accept that. And I think too much of ourselves to accept this standard that he's trying to impose on us in the world. He's going along with the definitions of our colonizers of what morality revolves around. It's a statement of the insignificance of our lives.
You can't be selective in your moral outrage.
No.
You have to be consistent.
You have to be consistent.
If you want to be taken seriously.
Yes.
You have to be consistent in your morality.
Yes. And you have to be able to look at if you use basic standards of morality that we hear all the time, you have to be, concerned and outraged by the immoral treatment of your people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be incensed by that. If I were going to I could speak for 25 hours at the Congress too, and I can use that 25 for 25 hours to talk about the conditions of Africans, to talk about the conditions of Mexican people, of people who are being oppressed by this country. You got to do better than that. You let them off the hook. You validate their presence. Otherwise, if you're not doing that, you validate the conditions that's imposed. You're in the Congress, and the Congress of the United States. This is one of the so-called three branches of government, et cetera, and you don't even mention the conditions of Black people in this country. No, Corey, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Those days are over, by the way. They're not going to be able to do that. And those days are long gone.
Let me switch gears a bit. Little Marco Rubio went to El Salvador a month ago.
Yeah.
Met with the president of El Salvador, and the president, and he's touring this huge mega prison.
Yes.
Which they say is nothing but a torture center.
Yes.
And the president turns to Little Marco and says, Little Marco, you can send your prisoners to us. And Little Marco looks at him and says, you know what? Nobody's ever said that before. We'll take that under advisement.
Yeah.
So the United States sends about 300 Venezuelans to El Salvador. Now, usually when you deport people, you send them back from whence they've come. You don't send Venezuelans to El Salvador.
Yeah.
All right. Now it's reported that one of the people they sent, this brother from Maryland,
yes,
here legally, but they deported all of these people without due process. This is a very long way for me to get to this point. Without due process. That says to me that all of this charade really has nothing to do with immigrants and has everything to do with us.
Yes.
This is a trial balloon.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
The thing is that the thing, we've tried to help people understand that rule, that is to say, govern without regard for law, is a true definition of dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
Rule without regard for law. They don't care what the damn law is. They attack my house with armored vehicles and things like that. And they attacked me because they said that I did participate in an election that talked about reparations for Black people. Even Obama came out and opposed to us dealing with the elections. So I'm supposed to have access to the right to participate in elections. I was one of the organizers fighting for what came to be the Voting Rights Act, etc. This is supposed to be law, but they don't care. They rule without regard for law. That is dictatorship, and that's what we've been looking at over and over again. And they do it right in front of people, right in public view. Like the Congress is supposed to be the one that declares war. When is the last time you've seen the Congress declare war for any of these aggressions that the United States is using all around the world? It doesn't happen that way. So it's ruled without regard for law. And it's a consequence. Again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's a consequence of having a society that rests upon a colonial foundation, because the colonized people have no rights at all. It's illogical to even presume that the colonized have rights. I mean, obviously, the colonized do not have rights to free speech, don't have rights to assemble. Certainly, people who are enslaved do not have a rights for that, and that's who we are. And the thing is that they've been able to successfully do up to now is to convince the majority population, the majority sector of the colonizer population, that they can do this stuff to us. They can erode laws and things like that, and it's not impacting them. It will impact you. It is impacting you even now. It has always impacted you, but you've not been able to see it. That's what's happening in Colombia. All these other things that we are talking about, they use us as the vehicle to attack the basic rights of the people, and that's why they need to be able, those white people who need to be able to come onto the side and under the leadership of those of us who are colonized and who have the most experience fighting against this system as it's beginning to express itself to white people as well. And yes, that brother, they had no rights. They just sent him there, and now the people are concerned because did Trump violate the law? Is there a constitutional crisis because the Supreme Court said that he had these rights and that rights and that or there's certainly some appeal course. And then Trump, said, well, I tried, but it didn't work out. And so therefore, and they said they're not even going to bring him back. They're going to leave him there. This is what they said. And
right. They said, oh, he's now in the custody.
Yeah.
Well, look, little Marco, you sent him.
Yeah.
Go get him.
Go get him.
It's not that.
Yeah.
I know our time is short. I know you got a couple things that you want to alert the audience to. Go ahead, and we've got to go through the ticker, but go ahead.
But you saw little Marco, as you and Don and John call him. I've named him. But you saw him sitting in the room with Zelensky.
Oh man, that's
when Trump kicked Zelensky out of the White House.
He didn't know what to do. He did not know. He actually looked like he should be sitting at the kids' table at Thanksgiving.
Oh, it makes you.
He had no business being in that conversation.
But you got these guys with these titles and all of that, and what they got backing them up is huge military forces because Marco, the tough guy, little Marco, wouldn't stand a chance in just an average black community, talking this tricity talks, what I'm saying?
And now he's supposed to be in Ukraine negotiating with Sergei Lavrov?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, that's a setup anyway. I mean, that's another story. But I want to thank you, my brother. And I want to also just let people know that we're involved in some really important things, and I really hope that that is to say, your listeners and viewers, and you too, comrade, will participate in this. That on Saturday, that is tomorrow, we have a Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa webinar, and it's not over. What's next for the Uhuru 3 fight back, and why it is more important now than ever. And of course, the discussion we're having right now is an indication of why it is so important. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be to get information on that. Go to handsoffuhuru.org, handsoffuhuru.org to register and for more information. And then on April 12th and 13th, this is really important because we're talking about elections. The Black is Black Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations have been doing for 9 years an election campaign school. So that we've been able to bring people into this discussion about elections and to disrupt this monopoly that the African petty bourgeoisie and white liberals have on the electoral process. We're going to take our issues, we're going to take reparations, we're going to take gentrification, we're going to take police murder and all those things into the electoral arena. We're calling on people to come in and participate in that. And so that's going to, you can go to blackisbackcoalition.org, blackisbackcoalition.org, and that's going to be the 12th and the 13th. And people who can get here should come to St. Louis. We want you to see what we're doing anyway. That's at 4101 West Florissant Avenue in St. Louis. And so check that out. And there are going to be some really important presenters at this meeting. Everybody from Charles Barron, who I think you know, to Zaki Barudi, who I think you know, I will be here, Comrade Afia Mungaza, who is a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who participated in the Atlanta project that responsible for the Black Power position that finally came out. So those are some of the things that's going to be happening, and I hope that everybody will come out and participate and you can also go to theburningspear.com to get access to more stuff. So I just want to thank you, my dear brother, Professor Dr.
Wilmer Leon.
Thank you so much for having us, for opening up this door to us,
hey, man.
Give us access to this remarkable audience that you have.
Well, thank you. You look great. I'm glad you've been able to weather the storm, and I'll be on that link tomorrow.
Good.
Thank you so much again for all you do for all of us, even though too many of us still don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate it. Kevin Baptiste, thank you, my brother. Thank you. And as he says, please come back. Oh, he says, please come back to East Oakland, because Kevin is in Oakland. Please come back to East Oakland.
I'll be there. Yes, I'll be there.
Well, and in fact, keep me posted on that, because that's my stomping grounds as well.
Oh yeah, right on.
Yeah. So would love to go.
Oh, splendid. Yes.
You go to
Dr.
Oakland.
Wilmer, in terms of, I just want to let you know, I plan to be here to turn the lights off.
Okay.
I'm going to turn the lights off when this thing is over. So, I plan to be here.
One other quick question. You have a radio station that's suing the county?
Yeah, we had a battle with the county, Pinellas County in Florida, because we had been granted something like $100,000 or more around this COVID resources, and to be able to use those resources to upgrade the radio station, what have you, and they have been given to us. And the county, it had to come through the county, and the county, after the grant was given to us, the county took it away from us, and then it went back again, and we got the grant based on all of the requirements, and the county took it again. So we're in the process of suing the county, because they said they'd taken us because we were indicted for working for the Russians and people related to us, and convicted for being conspiracy to work for the Russians.
Okay.
Yeah.
One Pretty Boy 11, thank you very much for that super sticker. Greatly appreciate it. Hey, y'all, we need you to please, those of you that are watching on Twitter or X, we need you all to subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah.
Thank you. We need to get those numbers up.
Yeah.
Brother Omali Yeshitela, greatly appreciate it. Be safe, my brother. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Relentless. Uhuru.
Thank you. Peace. Folks, thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episodes next week. Follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow on social media. You can find all the links below in the show description. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. We are doing this for you, but we cannot do this without you. See y'all next week. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.